Previously, we discussed the importance of drafting, of just writing your rough draft and putting those ideas onto paper to show yourself. And we looked at the idea of showing rather than telling. If you were to think of it in the context of a movie, in a movie, if you see a character who is crying, sobbing, and screaming out for the name of a dead relative, they don't have to say, "I'm so sad." Saying "I'm so sad" or "the character is sad," that is telling. Showing in a film would be to show the character being sad without them having to tell you that they are sad. You know it by what you see in a written text. You know it by what is being described to you, and you are creating the mental image of it in your head. How do you do that? Well, description is a tricky thing in stories. I have found that thinking of description like a painter's palette, where you have like 8 different paints to draw from, is the most effective way to approach description. So what are those 8 paints on your palette? Thoughts and feelings, objects and actions, setting and contexts, dialogue and relationships. We're going to break each of those pairs down in this video and the following 3. Today, starting with the actions and objects. Actions and objects, this is pretty much the easiest one. And when I've worked with young kids who are writing, typically their stories are just action and objects. This person is doing this, and now they're doing this, and it looks like this, and they're doing this. Basically, action and objects. Action, we're talking about verbs. Objects, we're talking about nouns. And you can describe both of those things. What are the nouns verbing? I know that sentence doesn't make sense, but you get what I mean. What are the things doing? Those are the actions. And what do those things look like? Well, that's the description of the objects. So objects, what do the things look like? In things, I would include animate and inanimate objects. What do the things, the people, look like? You have a character. Describe them. Allow me to create a visual image of what this person looks like in my head. Hey, you're talking about an important ring or some kind of clock that is important to someone. What does it look like? Describe it. And then the actions. What are those things doing? What do we see happening? If this was a film with the sound off and I was to try and describe what I was seeing, what are the things doing? What's happening on the screen? Well, that's the kind of description you need to put into your text so that someone reading it is able to recreate or create an image of what's going on in their minds. So these two are typically the easiest, the objects and the actions. Next, we're going to look at thoughts and feelings, dialogue, relationships, and as well settings and contexts. And by drawing from these other 6, you'll have a stronger, more complete painter's palette. Now, between these 8 kinds of description, you do not have to balance all of them perfectly, but I find the more balanced they are, usually the more effective a draft is. And at the same time, we'll get into this later, you can also purposely choose to minimize or even exclude some of these to create effects. But just know if you're accidentally excluding them, it's more likely than not that it's having a negative impact on the draft. So include actions and objects. What do the things look like? And what are those things doing?